Alright, so before we get started, let me show you what's going on here in this winglet. So I've bonded this piece of FR4 in there that I had from before, and it has a couple of holes in it as well. And I've bonded it in there with epoxy in between the outer and inner skins, so that's not going anywhere. And then I've taken those lead weights, the sinkers there, and put them in this nylon case, which is kind of like a pencil case type thing that a kid might use in school. It's pretty solid, and I put 3 cable ties around there nice and tight so that can't move around. And then I've gone and slid that there in front of that piece of FR4, and you can also see I've got a cable tie that goes through the holes in the FR4 and around that case, and then the bottom of that case is sitting on that rib below it, so it really can't go anywhere. It's absolutely secure in place there, and it's not going to touch that rudder cable. And this is how it ends up. So 1552 on the left side and 1551 on the right side, and if I just move left or right, that changes by a couple of pounds. And if I could have gotten away with just moving that ballast that's underneath the left seat, then I would have done that, but I actually needed some more weight out on the left hand side, and the best place to put it is the furthest place out. That way you put the least amount of weight on board. Alright, so I wanted to try and explain to you why I was adding that extra weight to the aircraft to balance it out. So, because I think it's a little bit of confusion going on there, exactly what's going on. So as you saw in the last video there, the aircraft was banking over here to the right, and in doing the weight on there, weight and balance, the amount of weight on this tire here was 37 pounds more than the one on the other side. I think it was 37, close to that. So the track of the aircraft is 108 inches across there, so that's 9 feet across there. It's quite a long arm. And if you actually take the point here on the ground up to the longitudinal axis, it's actually 6 feet. So in order to calculate the math for how much rotational torque there is going on here because of this weight imbalance, if you take a line that's perpendicular to the axis that goes from where the tire is here out to the longitudinal axis, so basically a 90-degree angle from that angle there, then you end up with about 45-degree angle to straight down here. So you've got 37 pounds coming straight down here. So if you take the component of that is basically perpendicular to that axis going out to the longitudinal axis, you've got about a 45-degree angle there. So that 37 pounds of weight here, the component pushing in this direction, in other words wanting to rotate the aircraft around, that is about 26 pounds if you do the math on that. So you've got 26 pounds pushing this way, at least when the aircraft is level. Obviously, as it goes further around into a bank, that becomes less and less and less, to the point where you're at 90 degrees and the imbalance is pretty much up and down. So you wouldn't get that rotational force anymore. But initially, when it comes off the ground and it's level, you've got 26 pounds pushing here perpendicular to that axis, to the longitudinal axis. So at 6 feet and 26 pounds, it's over 150 foot-pounds of torque that's trying to rotate the whole ship. So 150 foot-pounds of torque trying to rotate the ship is quite a lot. And that's more than what the prop is putting out when it's idling. And the prop is trying to do the same thing actually, because the prop rotates this way, and so the ship is wanting to rotate this way again. So it's adding to the problem. So I've got that and this all trying to make the aircraft bank to the right. And the reason why I'm balancing it to 0 is because if I balance it to 0 with me sitting in it, then I've removed that as a variable from the whole equation. And if the aircraft decides that wants to still bank, in this scenario, then it's an aerodynamic thing or a crosswind or something else. But at least I'm removing this variable from the equation. I don't have to say, well, is it because I'm out of balance? And typically when you do weight and balance on an aircraft, you measure the weight and you check the balance fore and aft, but you also need to check the balance left and right as well, because if this wing was way heavy, you'd be constantly wanting to pick it up. Now I do have an aileron trim tab that you saw on there in the last video, and I can adjust that from in the cabin. I have a hat switch on the stick where I can adjust that. But the problem is I don't know how much to adjust it just yet, and I don't really want to have that as a constant band-aid when I'm testing. I'd rather have it that the aircraft is perfectly balanced. The aileron should be just set to neutral. The trim should be set to neutral. And then I can work from there if I have some sort of balance. Now I have checked the twist on the wings just to make sure that it's still the same as when we set those. And both wings have exactly the same twist and washout on both sides. So everything's symmetrical there. Jeff was really adamant about making sure everything was square as well he should be. And he did a good job on it. So I'm not too worried about the aerodynamic nature of it, and by removing this imbalance, left and right, it's going to at least, give me more information that if I still have a problem, it's from something else. So 120 foot-pounds, or sorry, 150 foot-pounds is what that is talking that. That's about half of the foot-pounds of torque that my engine puts out in my Audi. So it's quite a lot of torquing force trying to rotate the aircraft around. And I had my friend Kevin just quickly do the math for me on that, and just did a rough estimate, based upon where the mass of the aircraft is, the total mass of the aircraft, and the number that he quickly came up with in terms of acceleration force. The initial acceleration force was 18 degrees per second squared. So after 1 second of that amount of force pushing on there, the aircraft is now rotating at 18 degrees per second. So obviously in the first second, it's not going to get 18 degrees down, but after the second second, it's going to be more than 18 degrees down. So that's quite a dramatic sort of, rotational motion or rolling motion on the aircraft. And I certainly don't want to have it so every time I get the thing off the ground that I'm constantly having to compensate for the fact that it wants to roll to the right. Why would you do that? And I'd much rather have it that when it comes off, it's going to be straight, and if for some reason it rolls left to right, it's aerodynamic or a gust or something else, and it's not to do with the weight. The other thing people had mentioned too in the comments of the last video was, why are you balancing it specifically for you sitting in the right seat? Why don't you just jump in the left seat? Well, there's really no difference for me being left or right seat in terms of the weight if the aircraft is balanced either way. I prefer to be in the right-hand seat. I've been in the right-hand seat for a long time now, and all of my taxi testing for a long time now has been in the right seat. I'm comfortable there. I don't want to make that another variable where I'm uncomfortable in the other side just for a test where potentially I'm getting it off the ground again and I have another problem, and now I'm uncomfortable. At least on this side, I'm comfortable. And yes, I mean, I can quite easily remove the weight that I put out in the winglet there if I need to. I can move the weight that's in the left-hand side on the floor there to balance it back out again. And have to keep in mind that this is just for a test. I mean, I'm testing the aircraft there. I'm not expecting anybody else when they get this aircraft, their own aircraft, to be able to do all this stuff. This is the sort of things, I mean, potentially it could be nothing could be a problem with this if it's 20 pounds out of balance or something like that later on, but for right now I don't know that. I've got to basically remove all the variables that I can, and so I can do a clean test and discover if there's another problem or prove that this was the problem. So obviously I don't expect everybody to be doing weight and balance to this level, but this is testing. I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't had a chance to get it off the ground long enough to know. I don't know how effective the aileron trim tab is, how much I need to put it in to compensate for this amount of roll. Also too, the amount of rolling in the aircraft here, if I had to compensate for it with the aileron trim, then that would be different depending on the airspeed that I'm going. It would be different depending on the angle of attack of the ship. I mean, it just creates a whole nother set of variables. So having the aircraft balanced left and right is critical at this point, and that's my feeling on it. And if you guys don't agree, well, that's your opinion, that's fine. But this is, to me, I'm the one who's in the aircraft right now. I know what it felt like. I could see what it did in the video, and so this is why I'm doing it. And hopefully I can get out here on the runway potentially today. I'm not sure yet. We've got low ceilings right now, and I don't want to be out there in low ceilings in case for some reason I need to get it airborne. And we've also been having these crosswinds every day for the last six days now, where it's pretty much a direct crosswind of about 5 or 6 knots. and right now it's fairly calm out there, maybe a 3-knot sort of 60-degree crosswind, but we'll see what happens when the cloud burns off here and this low ceiling burns off. Anyway, so this is my explanation of what's going on here, and hopefully that answers a whole bunch of your questions that you had out there. And the next thing I want to do too, I've got another suction mount that I can mount up in the wheel well in here on one of these sides, and put a camera right here. I'm a bit short on cameras right now. I've got my old camera that has the lens that's a bit blurry. I'm going to try putting that there. I'll probably take the aircraft out and taxi it around for a while and just see how that camera angle comes out, and see if it's worth anything, that I can actually make anything out here where the mounting points are for the main gear, to see exactly what's moving with the shimmy. And the other thing I've been doing too is been looking for a helmet option for flying the aircraft. And obviously I don't want to be flying it with a helmet all the time, but everybody suggested, oh, you need to get a helmet. Well, I've been looking at the various options for helmets out there, and I haven't really found a great one yet. I don't want to spend $3,000 on a helmet with an audio setup. I've seen some of the ones for ultralight aircraft out there that are potentially an option, but they're not great right now. Anyway, if you guys have some suggestions on a reasonably priced helmet that I can get that has an audio option, because I won't be using my Bose headset, my Bose 10 headset in there, because you can't just put your helmet over the top of those headsets. So if you guys have any choices or any suggestions on what I could do for a helmet, I'd appreciate that. I've been looking at the ultralight ones on Spruce as I think it's Comtronics, was it? Something like that. Anyway, there's a couple of different ones on there that are sort of in the $600 price range for something with a headset built into it as well. So if anybody has any recommendations on how good any of those are, that would be good, because I couldn't really find any real reviews on them or anything like that. Anyway, so that's another thing going on, and we'll see how we go. If I get the aircraft out here and see how this camera is and that's worthwhile showing, I'll show you some of that. And I'm just going to stick around today and wait and see what happens with the wind once this cloud burns off. And if not, the forecast is still saying for the next several days that we've got this easterly wind thing going on here, which is really odd, because at this time of the year you don't normally get this. And I think it's because there's a low pressure that's sort of been hovering around over the Atlantic there off the coast of sort of Florida, South Carolina. I think that's what's driving the weather right now. And so I'm really looking for conditions where I have at most sort of 4 or 5 knots directly down the runway, or a calm day, or maybe two knots of crosswind is probably the most I'm looking for, just because, again, I don't want to add another variable into the mix if I can avoid it. And being this is a critical time right now, I don't want to just go out there and go out when there's 5-6 knots of direct crosswind and then create another problem for myself and not be able to handle the aircraft because something else is wrong or whatever, or what's going on here is not correct. So anyway, that's probably going to be the update here. We'll see if I have any more to add to this video, and hopefully this explains everything. And just be patient with me. If you don't hear from me for a little bit, it's because there's nothing going on here. I'm waiting on the weather to cooperate with what I'm trying to do here. Anyway, appreciate your patience on all this, and thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see what I have for you either in the rest of this video, and if there's no more, then we'll see you. Otherwise, stay tuned. Thanks.